I've witnessed a real transformation in Liana from when I first started working with her. Through the process of her recovery, I would say she's begun to recognize her self-worth.
Hi, I'm Liana. I'm going to my freshman year of college starting in September. I battled with anorexia for over 5 years. I was diagnosed in 8th grade, but before I was diagnosed, I was a competitive swimmer for 8 years, and I swam 5 days a week for 2 hours each day. And there was a lot of pressure from my swim coaches and from me mostly. And when I got into 8th grade, I was like, okay, swimming's not enough. And I started to run. I joined track. But I wasn't really allowed to do track after I developed my staph infection. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but that was one of many from my malnutrition. So I went to the hospital, got rushed to the hospital for a staph infection. I was very close to dying, and it was like spreading to my bone. So my parents didn't think I had an eating disorder at that point. I was in the hospital, and I got weighed for the first time in front of my family, and my brother was like, okay, something's not right. They took my blood pressure. They're like, oh, she just must be an athlete. And I was an athlete, but I also had an eating disorder. It wasn't until I got out of the hospital when one of my mom's friends came over and was like, I think Liana has anorexia. I went to the doctor, I think like a week later, and they diagnosed me there. So I started working with a nutritionist and a doctor, and I didn't go to school for about 2 months because of my staph infection, and I also got another infection from the IV, which doesn't usually happen. So I missed school for 2 months, and those 2 months were very hard for me. I was trying to get better, but I didn't get to socialize, was at home doing my schoolwork, and I watched the Food Network. That was my thing. I was obsessed with food, but I wasn't eating it. I would cook for my family, I would find recipes for my mom, and I didn't eat any of it. It was just me. It was like my body's way of telling me that I need to eat, but it was like a self-conscious thing. So I went to the doctor, started working with a nutrition and a doctor, like I said, and it took me that was in May, and I would say till September I did okay with eating and recovery. But once I started high school, that was a really hard thing for me. I don't do well with change, and I did pretty well with the socialization and with friends and schoolwork, but I began to have this boy like me, and I didn't feel like I was good enough for him, and he asked me out. And that triggered a lot of stuff for me, and I wasn't okay with it. And I went back to my eating disorder, and I would say for another 6 months till October when I started my sophomore year, when I started the day program. I didn't really work that hard when I was in the hospital, and I really didn't. I can't say anything about it. But I did meet my therapist that I worked really hard with. After I got out, I started seeing the doctor again and a therapist. But there was points where I would, like in school, as you saw in the video, that I would use my calculator instead to add up calories instead of using it for math. And I wasn't concentrating in school. I wasn't concentrating on making new friends. I wasn't concentrating on anything except for the calories, my body, all these things that my eating disorder led me to. In 10th grade, after a few months after being in the hospital, there was one instance that made me, like Becky, the realization. There was a time where my parents were making me pasta or something for dinner, and I wanted to measure the sauce, and they wouldn't let me. And I needed to measure the sauce. I had to measure everything I ate, and they were like, no, I'm not letting you. They took away my cell phone, and I flipped out. I ran upstairs, grabbed my cell phone, and they followed me, and they were grabbing me and saying, Liana, you need to stop. I was hysterically crying. And then I was on the stairs, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to jump. And they brought me straight to the hospital, and I guess it's then where I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't let this control my life. I was going to jump up the stairs just to measure something. People don't measure food, and I wrote in my speech, food isn't kryptonite, it can't harm you, and I said in another speech that I wanted to be Superman, and I wanted not the kind that could run as fast as a speeding bullet, but like one that could help people, and that's what I'm doing now. And I'm the happiest I've ever been. I have 2 jobs, I have an internship, and I love like working with kids. Like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would never think like having like an extra snack of like an ice pop. And like I love doing that with kids, and like they show me their tongue, like what color is your tongue from the ice pop? And like at work, I love being myself and like standing on the counter and like singing, and yeah, I'm a little crazy at work. But I love being me. I mean, there's a Dr. Seuss quote, you are you, that's truer than you. There is no one else that's youer than you. And I mean, I am me, and I can't change that. And recovery, just like Becky said, it's worth the chance of being stuck. Like there was a process where there was points in recovery where I was like, this is not happening to me. No, it's not happening. Then there was a point where it was my identity, and that's all I was. I was Liana the anorexic. But I'm not Liana the anorexic, and I'm so much more than that. I could list a few things that I am. And I would have, like 2 years ago, I said I would never think of all these things. And I remember in therapy, she asked me to make a list of what I was, and I couldn't come up with anything. And now in therapy, I'll name a bunch, and I'm okay with that.